All three of them. And
One,
only
two,
does
three, yeah, they're gonna-
5 or 10 years.
Yes, like,
You guys are.
I'll get it.
Okay.
Sister, she actually lives like 4 houses down from me.
Okay.
Welcome. Welcome to the Monday, October 9th meeting of the Green Bay Planning Commission. If anybody would like to speak and has not already filled out a comment slip, I urge you to do so. They're located on the back table. Go ahead and fill one out and give it up to Stephanie. What is your pleasure regarding these minutes?
Motion approved.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, motion approved. Communications. Request by Alderman Chris Weary that due to a new or revised state law, ascertain what changes may be needed to the short-term rental ordinance. Recommendation, refer to the law department.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussions?
Just to clarify, I think we should be ahead of the curve, considering we moved to a permit process, but this is just to check and make sure that we're compliant with all those new regulations.
Okay, the recommendation is refer to law department. There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Old business none, new business. Consideration with possible action on the request to amend Area Development Plan, ADP 41, Crestwood Springs Court.
Thank you. This application is for ADP number 41, which is on the far west side of town. So just to give you a little frame of reference for what we're talking about here. This is a largely undeveloped parcel. This is Packland Drive here, Hazelwood to the north. So right now, the only roads that exist to go through is this one's just Candle, Lafayette, dead ends here, Springwood Drive, Crestwood Springs Drive, which is not Crestwood Springs Court, ends here. So with this area development plan, currently it's calling for this road extension to go through to bulb out in this area and then have a cul-de-sac to finish off with the subdivision in this area. The proposal that we received, this is north now, would make the road go straight through instead of doing the cul-de-sac and the bulb. So the final plat that would look like would have the road going all the way through to connect to Lafayette, so it'd be mostly for residential use. There have been questions and concerns from the neighborhood regarding what's this going to do to our property values, how fast is this going to develop, what kind of lots are these going to be. So I have sent this out to a couple of the neighbors, but they're basic single-family residential lots that they're going to be looking at. The zoning right now is R1, which is for single-family only. The comprehensive plan does call for a low-density residential here, so there would have to have a major change if we wanted to do anything else with the land, but the proposal right now is for single-family. Some other concerns were traffic and then the lot sizes and the number of lots with a cul-de-sac versus a through street. So with that, the cul-de-sac is obviously not the preferred option as far as our comprehensive plan talks about. We'd like to see the connections go through to make sure that there's ample connectivity between different neighborhoods. With this road specifically, if you look here, the connection would be in this area and just to connect through here. So it's not going to be for any sort of like travel or cut through traffic. It's only going to be for the neighborhood. So the connection here will really just provide for people to be able to come in, get to their home, exit, do the same in the opposite direction. I also did talk to the surveyor a bit about the lot configuration, and they said that if they did this configuration versus the cul-de-sac, they're looking at a total addition of 19 lots regardless. So Joel is here to discuss that if they have any further questions regarding that, but they did a basic dimensional study with both the cul-de-sac and the through streets, so the number of lots doesn't really change. And since it is strictly a neighborhood road, we're not anticipating much for traffic either. So with that, we are recommending approval of the request. There are quite a few neighbors here. I'm not sure how many of them are looking to speak, but the applicant is also here if they do have any further questions about the development itself. We don't necessarily have a timeline when it comes to platting. Once the land is divided, which should be in 40 to 60 days, then it's kind of up to the market and the developer to see how fast they'd like to build those. So we don't have a lot of answers when it comes to the timeline question, except for that the plat should be complete in 60 days.
She kind of lost me on the 19 additional lots, and then you said regardless, it's going to be only 19 lots?
So this proposal here, all of these are part of this subdivision, but these would be platted off in this fashion
Okay.
either way, no matter what the road pattern for this area is. So in this area, there's one outlot, then the rest are 19 additional residential lots.
Oh,
If this were to be cul-de-sac, they're looking at the same number of lots either way. When they platted it out with the cul-de-sac and without the cul-de-sac,
Oh, okay.
it's an additional 19 lots, not counting these, which would be platted that way either way.
So that's kind of removed from it, basically.
Yeah, so that doesn't really count because it's not really affected by this OMA
Okay.
application.
All right, thank you.
And Stephanie, as I understand, two major advantages to doing the flow-through, which is kind of something we've been working on. Number one, it's more pedestrian-friendly because you can go through the whole space. And number two, much better for public service access for the fire department and so on.
Yes,
Is that correct?
fire, water, the water doesn't have to stub out at the end, then it can be connected through. Fire's able to get through a lot more efficiently if it's a through street versus the cul-de-sac. So overall, this is a preferred road design. Obviously, the question with traffic comes up a lot when we're talking about cul-de-sac versus through, but with this situation, we're looking at the same number of homes and just neighborhood traffic here.
Another good thing for going all the way through is I've got some new subdivisions, basically, in my old district, and we ran into this in some areas also, is that the cul-de-sacs are actually plowed in the winter by private contractors, and they don't get as quick as response to getting those cleaned out as a city street.
Yeah, it's much
So-
faster to just
So that's a plus
go.
value.
Anything else?
Thank you. Is there any further discussion among the commission? The floor, or the chair would entertain a motion to open up the floor for,
Motion to open the floor?
Second?
we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The floor is open. Laurie Butch, do you wish to speak?
An element here, but I'm one of the neighbors on this proposed subdivision area, and of course, I'm here on behalf of the neighborhood, where we already have cul-de-sacs in the neighborhood, and it's a nice, quiet neighborhood. And all, the addition of all these lots in the wooded area behind, right behind our house is, you know, a little bit alarming. And as far as the through streets, you know, it would be a much quieter neighborhood still. It'd be a little, I mean, either way, they're gonna ruin the whole woods, but I guess I didn't understand either how you could only have 19 lots with cul-de-sacs or without. I didn't understand that, how you could only, I mean, how would you arrange that so that you'd,
I don't have the rendering with me. Do
Oh.
you have one with you?
I'm just wondering how
Okay.
all those lots could fit in the cul-de-sac model as well.
They would just be configured differently.
So if you're looking, this would be the same configuration. So these lots are pretty much unchanged except for, let's see. These are a little bit different. And then basically you just reduce the size here. And then these ones are the extended lots. And then these would face Lafayette versus facing inwards towards the cul-de-sac. So it's the
Still,
same
you'd
number of
eliminate
lots.
that excess traffic, which you say isn't drive-through, but it could be drive-through traffic there too as
Well,
well.
typically, if you're looking at a road that goes only through a neighborhood that doesn't connect, it doesn't connect out to Hazelwood and doesn't connect out to Parkwood, which also does not connect out to Packerland. Usually you'd see cut through on something like this because it gives you that connection point. This would just be connecting through one residential road to another residential road. So that's what we're saying, we don't anticipate cut-through traffic for that reason.
Okay, well, I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay.
I prefer the cul-de-sac model, but, you know.
Thank you. Todd or Joan Olson, do you wish to speak?
I guess my only question I just have is,
Closer to
you know,
the podium,
for the developer or whatever, but what, concerning property values and all that kind of stuff, so you say single-family homes, but I mean, what are we looking at for, I want to say pricing on the lots and all that kind of stuff? Is this going to be some kind of, you know, I don't want to tear anything apart or say something, but is it going to be a lower price pointed type thing, or is it going to be, do we know? Does anyone have any?
Well, as
answers
far
on
as the
that?
city knows, when we get applications for subdivision, we're not looking necessarily at the price point, we just make sure that they meet the dimensional standards that are required. The lots that they're proposing are fairly large, so they would be fitting with the neighborhood that you guys already have.
That's the concern. Is it going to fit, you know,
Yeah.
or are they going to put up something like going up in Hobart or all the cookie cutter, stuff that's.
As far as the design, we don't really regulate that. I mean, once somebody has the property, it's their right to put up whatever they like as long as it follows city code. But when we are looking at the dimensions, and the dimensions do match those of the lots that are surrounding it from other subdivisions.
Okay.
I think just to answer the gentleman's question too, in terms of, the build out of the infrastructure and site development, I mean, there's enough cost that goes in
Involved
here
that he's gonna-
that they're gonna be needing to, just based on the economics, sell the land for a certain price, which then kind of dictates a certain level of homes on here.
Oh.
I think, Ms. Hummel's point in terms of, we don't dictate the price points, but just given the pieces putting together of what it takes to develop this, I would anticipate it's going to meet or exceed what's been going on in the neighborhood. I think the second point is, as we've talked internally, we don't have a lot of opportunities for owner-occupied residential development on the west side. So I think in terms of individuals who would like to own a home on the west side, there's very limited choice, especially in the city itself. So I think in that sense, would, just based on the supply and demand, push the prices up on these lots.
Okay. So with that, what do you see when you see developments like this or anything like that? What kind of effect on existing property values is there?
In terms of the impact, I think what it does, again, the property value, from an assessment standpoint, we'll go out when the homes are built and purchased and assess for those values. And really for, residential, similar type products around there, it's going to come down to the comparables of what sells in that neighborhood. So in terms of, your property value in your home, if you're looking to sell, the realtor's still going to be looking at, and the banks are still going to be looking at, what basically sold in the last 6-12 months that looks like your house and is kind of like your house in
Just
the
like an
neighborhood.
appraisal there, yeah.
Correct. So in terms of, those direct things, really the only things that we start to see where there's, a direct detriment to property values is if you have maybe some type of undesirable industrial use or, landfills. Those types of things really are the only ones that can maybe have a direct impact in terms of when the appraiser looks at like, all right, there's something negligible here. But in terms of adding, more of the same type of product, it won't have an impact on that.
And then, I guess so it's all single family? at
Yes,
least?
right now, it's all zoned for single family, so if they want to do anything other than single family, they would have to go through and get a comprehensive plan amendment and a rezoning or a conditional use permit, both of which would be a public process that you'd all get noticed on and have to go
Okay.
before plan commission and city council again.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Sapner, do you wish to speak?
Only ever so briefly, do we know when this is going to begin? I mean, when they're gonna start, like, putting roads in and such things?
As was stated earlier, it'll be 60 days
For the plat to get
for the plat to get
finalized,
finalized. and then
60
after
days
that,
from now?
Yeah.
approximately, yeah.
And that's in the plot, that's when it's finalized, and then after that
It'll be
presumably,
up to a developer.
and then it's up to the developer for whether they wanna do it. So the only timeline we have is 60 days from now that'll be finalized, then it's up to the developer when to start selling it.
Yeah, it could be next year, who knows? Thank you. John Van Rossum, do you wish to speak?
Well, I just got a question, kind of following up on what Tom asked. You indicated that, that the plat is finalized. Okay, what happens then? The developer starts to sell lots? Is that the next step?
Yes,
Well,
so
when will the roads actually be built?
that depends on how quickly they're selling the lots. So obviously, the road has to be built in order for the lots to be built on. So once they have everything divided, they can start working on an agreement to have the road built, and then also to start selling those lots, that way they can then build on those lots.
Okay, so the timeline there is just they
As
start to
market
sell the
dictates, I would
lots.
imagine, yeah.
But they're not really going to be able to sell the lots till the road is in, I would think.
I don't know a lot about real estate. I imagine that you can start doing sales on them before the road is built. It depends on how quickly they can get something established with when the road can be built. That's something between the developer and our Department of Public Works.
And who pays for that? Who pays for the road to be built and sewers to be put in, electricity, the whole bit?
That's worked out with the developer through the planning process.
Okay,
So right now, that's what the review is. We make sure that all the dimensions of the lots are okay, that they'll have all the services available, and then they give a good timeline and a cost estimate for how much it's gonna cost. That doesn't impact any of the neighbors at all. That's only done through the developer.
Okay, and then on the street up there, you got Lafayette is gonna be added in. Is that gonna go further,
Well,
further
right
east, I
now-
guess that is? or-
So everything that's in pink is what our future plans are for the road. This development, however, just brings Lafayette to about here, and then Crestwood Springs Drive to connect to Lafayette. So this part of the area development plan would be done with this subdivision. Once this land starts getting platted, then this area gets looked at, and then Lafayette would, right now, go to this intersection up to Eric, and then cul-de-sac out before it hits Packer land. But again, if somebody comes in and buys all this land and they want to do a different road configuration, the same process would occur where they would bring that to us, we would discuss it with them, and then it would go through this process.
So there is kind of a plan then to actually develop Lafayette further through, at least at some
Yes.
point in time. And then what about the roads heading down then, off of Lafayette?
So this is Eric, which would go all the way
Yes.
through to Parkwood.
So that will go.
So that would be the
through.
major connection north-south that would go adjacent to Packer land. Everything else would be a local road.
So they are talking then potentially of putting lots on that, which would be Eric Street then, or Eric Court,
Yes.
whatever it is.
So this is something that gets established through property owners and the city itself, just so that way, in case somebody wanted to come in and build a McMansion on it, we'd say there's a road that's supposed to go there, so where else can this road go? So this is just to maintain some road connections for us. But obviously, these are all amendable, that's why we're here, we have this process, that way if someone says, I have a better idea, we can look at that.
Okay. And just in looking at this plat, they had the lots put through it, there's something called an outlot sitting there in the corner.
Yes.
What
Outlots,
does
you don't
that
build
mean?
on.
Oh, you
So
don't build.
they're land that is part of the parcel, but it's not buildable land. So sometimes it's where your stormwater features are, it can be where wetlands are. Sometimes they're just retained because it would make an awkward size of a lot. There's a lot of reasons to do it, but basically it's just unbuildable land.
Okay. All right, I guess that's all the questions I've got, so, thanks.
Thank you. Judy Mansky, you had stated no. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak that hasn't?
Were we going to hear from the developer?
Yeah.
One last question. So the lots can be sold before the road is built? Does the road get built first, and then the lots get sold, or do the lots?
That'd be a question for the developer. I'm going to ask if he wants to come up to speak next, so he can cover it. Do you wish to speak then?
My name is Joel Airforth. I'm with Mach 4 Engineering. I'm representing the developer this evening. As Stephanie kind of encompassed all of what we're trying to do, it's essentially a 27-lot development. I think the point was it 19 additional lots? It's 27 total, whether we did the cul-de-sacs or we did the through street. We went with the through street because most municipalities these days are, encouraging the through streets. More often than not, it's actually for the snow plowings. The excuse we hear, you hear studies of takes 10 minutes to plow a cul-de-sac, so you figure 20 minutes every time it snow falls, that adds up over, the lifetime of that development. So most municipalities are pushing that through street concept. We would concur with Stephanie on the traffic flow. If you limited it, you're still gonna have traffic flow in a north-south direction. Probably not unless you live in that subdivision, it's probably gonna be a slower way, which tends to discourage people from doing it. If you had a cul-de-sac, it would probably increase the amount of traffic because you could only access 3/4 or half that subdivision via one entrance. So it's probably gonna direct traffic down to the south and loop everybody around. So in the end of it today, you're probably gonna have a more congested traffic flow with a cul-de-sac feature. So to address the gentleman's question about the timing of it, you could sell a lot, I suppose, but it's seldom if ever done because one, you can't physically see the lots without the streets in it. And it's very difficult to sell a lot without somebody being able to physically visualize where their lot corners are, especially in just a wide open space like that. So the typical, our next steps would be, we have the preliminary plat in for review, and and that, you have 60 days to review, and then it goes to a final plat. In the meantime, there's also, that's one of the first steps. I think it's actually the first step, but the preliminary plat's probably one of the easier processes. We still have to go through all the DPW steps, getting the utilities approved, the infrastructure improved, the stormwater management, and then that all goes to the DNR, the state for the plumbing and water, sewer and water, and there's and Green Bay or new water. So there's many steps to go. I guess ideally, if the stars aligned, we would like to start construction probably in spring. And then once they would come through, you wouldn't even put the property irons in until typically after we try to get a waiver for the front irons, put the back irons in. And then after they do the road construction, then you put the irons in place and monument the lots and typically sell it. So ideally speaking, if everything lined right, you're probably looking at late summer, early fall, best case scenario.
And you're talking about spring for the road construction starting, right?
Yes, yeah.
And then late summer, early fall for sales starting.
Correct.
And
Roughly,
construction
there's so many
Yeah.
juggling,
Right,
yeah,
understood.
right.
And it's absolutely paying attention to the stars aligning.
The stars aligning and obviously the market. If you have another 2008, 2009 situation, it might sit there for a while. But that's the intent.
Would you anticipate the homes to be similar in construction and value to what is there right now or not?
Yeah, I mean, we actually have the in conjunction with the preliminary plat, we actually have the road design and the stormwater stuff all set for review. We're proposing R1. We're not proposing a change in zoning, so it's going to be R1 construction.
Okay.
What's an iron?
The property owner.
What's that?
If you look in the corner of your yard, there should be an iron, physically like an iron. Yeah. And if you have a square lot, all four corners will have one. It marks your property line.
Are we able to ask him questions? No?
Can we ask you questions to ask him?
That's the way it works.
I've got a question. On road construction, when the heavy trucks are coming through for the road construction, like dump trucks and backhoes, and when the dirt gets left on the street, how long does the contractor have to clean it up so it doesn't get dragged into the house or in driveways or?
Green Bay is probably one of the more aggressive municipalities, if not the most aggressive municipality on erosion control.
Are we talking erosion, I'm talking dirty streets?
Sediment control.
To answer the gentleman's question, it's both in terms of when a project is going, we have erosion control specialists. Also, all of our building inspectors are looking for issues, and if a complaint comes in, we follow up immediately in some things. If we see like literally sediment going into the storm sewer, they need to be taken care of like ASAP in 24 hours. Other things about stabilization maybe need to be taken care of within 48 hours. But I think, Mr. Furth's point, that we are on top of those things. So if you see something, you can call it in and we'll address it with the developer.
An added level of security, if you will. I don't know if that's the right term, but on a project of this nature, we're designing it. The developer will build it to city standards, but city staff is on site during construction. They're inspecting it, making sure it's built to city specifications. So they have an erosion control inspector, but their city inspectors are on site on a daily basis. So there's a lot of eyes watching it. As far as entrances in and out or traffic routes, that'll be worked out with DPW as the project progresses.
And Mr. Chair, there was a woman just behind the gentleman's foot.
Sir, would you please state your name and address for the record?
Randy Burnt, 2085 Crestwood Springs Drive.
Thank you. Ma'am, did you have a question?
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Would you state your name, please? And
Joan
address?
Olson.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that area back there, but it's all very tall pine trees. It's rows of pine trees.
Mm-hmm.
And those are not trees that somebody is going to want in their house, in your front yard, your side yard. in a plot like that anyway. I don't think none of us have those trees in our yard, they're all cut down.
Okay.
My question is, when they go to develop it, are they gonna just cut all those trees down when they put the road in? Or are they gonna put the road in between the trees and?
Where the road is planned to go, for the right-of-way, they'll
Right.
remove those trees. When they sell the lots, it'll be up to the new property owner to decide what he does with his land.
So they're not planning on cutting all the trees down?
Just to put the roads through,
Okay.
like any wooded area.
They'll go down with the wind.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
We will return to the regular order of business. Is there any further discussion among the commission? The chair would entertain a motion.
Make a motion approved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, consideration with possible action on the request of Downtown Green Bay Incorporated to approval of the 2018 Business Improvement District operating plan.
Thank you. So we have, every year, we have the bids come in to present their operating plans to us. So this is their plan for 2018. And then in February, they come in and report how it's going, accomplishments that they had on the last year's plan. So this one's mostly for what they're planning to do and how their budget is looking. So we do have representatives from each of the bids here, so you can hear them all at once if you want to hear them separately, but they all need individual motions for approval.
Thank you.
So,
We should take them individually then.
I've got one question for all of them. Has anything changed?
Mr. Marcus?
Why did everyone leave? I was just going to give a 30-minute presentation about everything happening downtown. This is not fair.
This is the exciting
No
stuff.
question.
We're planting trees downtown, yeah.
That's right, Tim.
Hey, Bill. Someone flagged them down.
Somehow anticipated your 30-minute expectations.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have a major formal presentation or a PowerPoint, but I'll start off by talking about, it makes no difference. I'm here to represent both Old Main Street and the downtown districts. You have received a copy of our bid operating plans, so our boards and our bid boards have approved our budget and our operating plan, and now it's coming to the Plan Commission and ultimately to the City Council. I'll start off with just maybe the Main Street District, and in recognizing that from a bid standpoint, and our budget is there, Old Main Street has a very thin budget, and the commercial property growth in that district has been limited. There have been some properties that have been taken off the tax rolls, but for good reason. The school district bought a blighted property, and it is now the Rosa Manuka School. Responsible property owner and a good use of that space, and an important addition in our community, having an appropriate school for challenged students. There was some assessment changes when the Art Garage acquired its property, so that was 10 years ago that was going to be a commercial development, and now it's a nonprofit organization, but it's also a thriving cultural center with NWTC having multiple disciplines there, that property being a major kind of a major anchor coming into the Main Street District, and very compatible with movement to have the Main Street District become the Arts District. In the past few years, the activity and the changes taking place around Whitney Park have been one of the key drivers for confidence in the Main Street District. And so Garrett Bader's decision to take a blighted block and turn it into Whitney Townhomes, we're seeing that that addition of 10 residences into that neighborhood has sparked interest in event activation in Whitney Park. A Leadership Green Bay class took on building an entertainment stage. Another group had an event and is making the event, making that park more pet-friendly. And construction is underway right now for a dog run, a dog area in Whitney Park. But in addition, The activity in Whitney Park, just over the past 24 months, has triggered a Milwaukee developer to acquire Whitney School and bring in 40 more residential units. Now, Whitney School is not even in the Main Street district, but it is close enough to have it be part of the equation that we look forward to, an influx of market rate units, both apartments and townhomes. We're also very pleased that due to success in the immediate area and growing confidence by one developer, Garrett Bader, he has a planning option on a property on Main Street on 900 Cedar, a commercial building with another potential 20 rental units, market rate apartments. And I am aware that he acquired another property, the Wen's Warehouse, just recently. So we haven't seen a great deal of property transactions in the Main Street district. We're very pleased that Garrett is making things happen. We want to identify other developers. Main Street district has some challenged properties as well, and some like the Jake's Pizza, and there's a property on Three Corners that a developer is evaluating some options. The 1001 Club is trying to get reopened. So Main Street is not without some of its challenges, and it's not on a fast track. And our organization, both downtown and Old Main Street, we've been at it for, these organizations were formed about 20 years ago. So it's been a 2-decade process, but I think Main Street is heading in the right direction. We are going to take those $60,000 worth of bid funds and partner with them with an additional 60 or more that we're going to raise through sponsorship and events, and continue to make things happen. So our focus is still in business development, marketing, and special events and physical improvements. We are funding the planter program. We're funding the planted medians, working with the business there. And we're pleased that people are responding. 10 townhomes were sold in the Main Street district, and now developers talking about additional progress. We are not going it alone. We have great partners. We work very closely with the City of Green Bay Economic Development. We see Wendy and Kevin and Matt as very important partners. There's other economic organizations that we work with. And another one, we see probably better connectivity with the other bids in the community, and especially our cohesiveness and working very closely with the On Broadway district. We have a good story to tell, and this is both for downtown and Old Main Street. We were very pleased that we were able to get some stadium district funds, and that just leverages the funds that we have already. And downtown and Old Main Street are sharing $25,000, and we are employing those dollars in a way that helps tell our story. And one is the Summer in the City Guide. We were able to print 20,000 more Summer in the City Guides this year because of that additional assistance. And so Summer in the City and Winter in the City and What's Up Downtown are right now our most important mechanisms that we have to tell our story and get the word out. We've made some staff changes, and we've decided to commit even more to the full-time need of programming and also marketing. And we just within the past year, we have hired a full-time events manager and a full-time marketing manager. And those people are now getting up to speed, and they were a part of the bid planning process. And so that's what I have for you on Old Main Street. I'm happy to take a breath and respond to some of your questions about Old Main Street. Sid?
Can I kind of piggyback that with the materials that you provided for us for downtown Green Bay? I'm curious as to the difference in administrative costs as opposed to program costs. With Old Main Street, you're coming fairly, and you've got some ambitious plans for programs. Administration, you're coming in at about $75,000 for those costs, administration and operating, and a little bit over $50,000 for programs. So you've got half again the amount going into operations as going into the payoff stuff, the stuff that I would look at and kick the tires.
Right.
It's real different with downtown Green Bay. The operating and administrative expenses are not quite, but almost twice what's listed as program expenses.
Yes,
And I know
and,
you all share a lot, and I'm not
right.
sure how to sort that all out.
And what I share with the boards of downtown and Old Main Street frequently is that it is the people who we employ. I believe our people are probably our best program. So, when you take a look at the program expenses, or the admin expenses for Old Main Street, being in the neighborhood of $60,000, that organization is enjoying a shared relationship with Old Main Street. So that is an organization that would not have an executive director, would not have an events manager, would not have a marketing manager or interns without a shared relationship with the downtown. So what I'm saying to you is those costs are so small when you take a look at other organizations who are trying to employ a professional staff. So that is the professional team at a cost of $63,000 per year. That Old Main Street has an entity that's representing them at business functions, maps, guides, brochures, doing media interviews, writing a newsletter. Those are the things that Old Main Street is going to get out of a $60,000 administrative expense.
I've been really impressed by the collaboration between the two entities. But am I to understand that some of the cost of what Old Main Street gets is going to show up on the downtown Green Bay side?
No, actually, to be honest with you, in that admin is also 25% of having an office in the Bellin Building, 25% of a copy machine and computer technology. So there's a lot that goes into that in running an operation.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that's historically, Old Main and downtown have had this 25%, 75% relationship, mainly because of the ability to pay.
And that's about 25, 75 is about the
That's
comparison.
a very common percentage breakdown. Yeah.
Is anything going to be done to tackle the new fancy Dan and totally complicated parking arrangements in the downtown area? Do you know?
Well, yeah, I'm not an expert on parking, but I know that that is a balancing act, and we do work closely with the parking division.
Okay.
And, as an area develops, as a downtown succeeds, going vertical we need to get used to that.
Yeah.
And there are costs involved with parking infrastructure, so we need to kind of roll with those changes as well.
Thank you.
Jeff, I noticed in your budget, there's a reference to the charities. Is there a special program that downtown Green Bay has?
Yes, the best way I can explain this to you is that I work for three entities. Old Main Street is a separate 501c3. Downtown Green Bay, Inc. is the organization, the bid that carries out the programs that you're all familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And Downtown Green Bay Charities is a 501c3. That is the 501c3 that we operate all of our events out of. So we don't use any bid dollars for putting on our special events. We coordinate something like 60-some special events. So all the sponsorships and all the program fees, when we coordinate the Saturday Farmers Market, all the fees that the vendors pay, concessions, et cetera, that goes through charity. So what we've done here is we wanted to show you, we could have really simplified it and just said, downtown is getting $200,000 worth of bid money, and here's how we spend it. What we wanted to show you is we're a three-legged stool that is Old Main and Downtown Green Bay and charities. We're doing events, we're doing business development, we're doing physical improvements. It would be very difficult for me to just say, okay, of the $200,000 bid money, and part of it is in the admin, the professional people that we have working. I work in all three of those entities, so we work with our boards to show how those costs are going to be broken down. And we have a formula for doing that. I don't want to bore you with it, but it's really all about equity, being fair to those three entities, and the dollars we raise in sponsorship or in bid money. But charities is the Christmas parade, the farmers market, Fridays on the Fox, Dine on the Deck, Summer in the Park concerts, all the events that we do go through that 501c3.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
I'll make I mean, I was kind of in the old Main Street mindset there. I mean, did you want any information on downtown, or you want to handle Old Main independently?
Shall we go ahead and take care of Old Main?
Why don't we do that?
Okay. I'd like to move adoption of the plan for Old Main Street.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the operating plan for Old Main Street. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that plan is approved. Now, the downtown?
Yes.
Anything further that?
Right, and the tune is very similar in the downtown district. Events and marketing and business development and physical improvement. So those four target areas are where we see the vast majority of our work. I mean, I guess what I'd share with you is that everything that we're doing is meant to make this a vibrant community, a vibrant downtown. We realize that a healthy downtown, it really speaks to the character of an entire community. We also see that we're working for 250,000 people who live in Brown County. And so our initiatives are to become more welcoming, to become the first place that an entrepreneur thinks when he or she is going to employ a dozen or 24 people. Where do I want to bring my staff of people? And we want them to choose downtown. So we're working closely with property owners and developers. The way events and business development interact with one another is as great as ever before. We are seeing the residential progress. Metro opened about a year ago. That property is now 93% occupied, and that's Green Bay's highest end residential property. We're pleased that it's on the city deck, but we're also very pleased that we're not done yet. We know that downtown needs hundreds of more residential units of all types, and it's not just on the city deck. We know they will be in the Broadway district. We know that they will be at the shipyard and in other parts of and we already know that Whitney School is a great place for 40 of those. But we need to, as downtown and as our community advances, it is not, we're not shy to say that we need a couple hundred or more residential units when the time is right, and putting them in the right place. So residential is, demand continues to be strong, and supply at this point is relatively limited. Many of the residential developments are 100% occupied. From the business development standpoint, I would just cite a small business like ARX Fitness that just celebrated their opening in City Deck Landing. A small business that came to Green Bay and they came to downtown because that's where it's happening. We want that message to continue to get out there. Right behind the library, many of you might know it as the Feld Building, IBM building. Another company acquired that, Grainger, and is about to move almost 300 employees to the downtown and consolidating some of their local operations. And they're moving their people downtown for a reason. Work closely with the city to make that happen. And we want to use those two examples to attract additional development in the downtown. Other things that are happening, and some of the things are a little on the quieter side. American Foods Group bought the building right across the street on South Washington Street, and they're investing heavily in moving 30 or 40 IT people, expanding their operations. A company headquartered here, American Foods Group, and expanding their operations. The Hotel Northland, the news that we read recently there, that it's in receivership, and the person in charge is, it's our understanding that we're going to see work taking place there, and the project completed. That will do a great deal for downtown in many respects, existing businesses and attracting new. So, I want you to know that our interest in creating a healthy downtown to retaining our businesses is important, and we have businesses of all types, restaurant, corporate, and small and large businesses. So retention of businesses is important, and I think the Hotel Northland will do a great deal in keeping downtown vibrant. So that's just one additional example of a business that we're looking forward to seeing open in 2018.
Thank you.
I'm delighted to see the focus on storefront development too, and 3 cheers if you can get some motion on Shower and Schumacher. That's such a gorgeous building. I would love to see it really a gem in the downtown.
It certainly is. It's been vacant for a dozen plus,
Yeah,
and
a long
this
time.
the city is working diligently on that one.
Thank you so much.
I do have one question, I don't know if this is for our staff or for Jeff, but when we talk about a rate per $1,000 of assessed value, does that include personal property, or is it just real estate?
It is on real property.
Okay, so
Yes.
so the changes in personal property that occur.
Those assessment rates, which have not changed for 15 years, are on the assessed value of the real estate.
The real estate.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, you answered it. Yeah, it's on real estate.
This time the real estate, okay.
Any Commissioner Wisbech?
As always, I would like to commend Jeff for the great job he does. And, he's got his hands full, but he's got an excellent staff. Oh, and by that way, he's got a great committee working for him, too.
Yes, Jerry, thank you.
And with that in mind, I would like to make a motion to approve the downtown Green Bay district, what do you call it?
Operating downtown bid district, bid plan.
Bid plan, okay.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the DGBI operating plan. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
That
you.
plan is approved.
Good to be with you tonight.
Thanks, Jeff. Number 5, consideration with possible action on the request of On Broadway Incorporated for approval of their 2018 Business Improvement District operating plan.
Hello.
Hello.
So I am Brian Johnson. I am the Executive Director of On Broadway. I've been in that role now for probably about a year and a half. So, you know, some of our priorities and strategic objectives are quite a bit different than perhaps an organization like Jeff, you know, where he's kind of been at the helm for quite some time and has figured some of these things out that we're still working on. So when I start to look at the past year and kind of where we're going, maybe a couple of things that I would share with you by way of success. One of the things is that we're continuing to work on our Love Here, Live Here campaign, if you've not heard of it. It's really focused on the residential neighborhoods immediately adjacent to our district. One of the things that we feel that we have is slightly different. When you start to look at the side of the river that Jeff oversees, you have a lot of apartment complexes, vertical housing, which is obviously something that is what you typically find in a downtown area. The Love Here, Live Here campaign we look at as an opportunity to really market the fact that you can own a home right in downtown Green Bay. And so we think that that's a really distinct thing. However, one of the disadvantages, I think, with a lot of the housing stock in our neighborhood is that it's a lot of it's kind of fallen into some disrepair. And so while it's kind of a mixed neighborhood, some homes are in really great condition. Our focus tends to be more on those homes that could use a little bit of attention. And so we've really spent some time on that and have received some grants to help us in that regard. And we've worked with the city, and they've made some grant funding available for some different programs. And so we're really excited about some of the things we're able to do there. Events is and continues to be a big part of what we do. And when we look at the number of events that we hosted, we basically do some reporting with the state. We are a Main Street program with the state of Wisconsin. And so we do report our numbers based on the state's biennium budget term. So during that time frame, we hosted 28 events with approximately 260,000 people that we brought down into the district. And of course, the objective with that is to bring people down to patronize the district, to visit, to see what we're doing. One of the new event series that we launched this year, which we were really excited about, was called the Ignite Market. If you're not familiar or if you hadn't heard it or participated in it, it's really, think of it as a maker's market or a storefront for Etsy, coupled with a lot of interactive entertainment, original live music. So that series, we're estimating drew about 40,000 people into our district. And for a first-year series, we're just ecstatic with that. And a big part of it was being able to I think highlight maybe some underutilized areas of our district. It is a traveling open-air market, so we had a hot air balloon glow down in Light Park. We got them down into the warehouse area a little bit, and so that was a great success for us this year. When you start to look at our bid, one of the things, we're actually one of the lowest assessed bids in the entire state of Wisconsin. So our bid, I mean, it's low for a couple of reasons. One is we just have a low assessment rate. The other part is that the total property value in our district is not as high as we'd like it to be. So that's certainly one of the areas that we're working on. We take in about $53,000 as our projection in our bid, which comprises about 10 to 15% of On Broadway's overall budget. So you'll find it's very different compared to some other bids throughout the state of Wisconsin where sometimes their budgets can be 100%, of that assessment value. So we're running very lean right now. And the reason I like to call that out is a couple of reasons. One is, as an organization, we are responsible for raising a lot of money above and beyond, I guess, what's generated through the bid assessment. And so when you look at what our bid invests in, it's a lot of tangible things. And then the marketing that we do spend on is really directly related to trying to market the district and getting people to visit the district. One of our goals as we look to next year is to increase staff. We used to be a staff, I think, of 4 people plus a lot of interns and other part-time help. We are now down to 2 individuals. A lot of that has been our 990s are public information. The organization has been slipping in that area, and so that's a big part, I think, of when I kind of came on board was to kind of reverse that trend, and I'm happy to say that just looking at our year-to-date financials this year, we're in very good shape, and I'm really excited about what that means for us moving into the future as we've been able to reverse that quite well. Branding is going to be a big priority for us in this coming year. I think it's one of those things that just hasn't been addressed in quite some time, and so we've actually been having some very collaborative discussions with Jeff and his team about what that means for downtown. I think the average consumer doesn't look at our 3 districts and think, downtown is 3 districts. They see downtown, and so I think that's one of the exciting things about being able to come into this position was being able to connect with an old friend in Jeff and have those very collaborative conversations about how we make this look and work like one singular downtown. Strategic planning is higher on our priority. We've actually secured a facilitator with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation who's going to be coming in before the end of the year and kind of charting out a new strategic plan for us moving forward. When we look back at this year too, another thing that was significant is we did receive a grant from WDC to conduct a streetscape design. I think when you go through the district, one of the things you may notice is there's a lot of different design elements throughout the district that sometimes can be a little bit confusing and conflicting, and I think sometimes you might think it's a district that grew up in the 80s. You turn the corner and you might think you were back in the 40s, and so the purpose of the streetscape design was to try to help us kind of come together with one clear, I guess, palette of what we want the district to be, and we had a lot of great community input in that session, and now it's going to be put on our design committee to really come up with some changes to implement in that regard. Some of the more notable developments going on in our district, I think residential is obviously something that we look to as well. When you think about downtown development, I think you like to think of a 3-legged stool, and that is you want people to live there and work there and recreate there. And I think the recreating is certainly something that has worked in our favor based on the numbers. We'd like to see more people working there, but living there as well to take advantage of those amenities that we're creating. So Hibernia House was a new residential development that opened in the district this past year. I know that there's some other discussions being had with the rail yard development, and I think there's also been, it's been publicly stated there's some other discussions occurring for the southern end of the district. So I think what's important to note is that it's high on our priority list, that we'd like to increase the number of residential units in the district. So of course, on that note, the rail yard is one of those things that's making a lot of headlines right now. I think that development agreement, Kevin, is due December 1st, somewhere in there?
For
the rail yard with DDL?
Yes, in terms of by the end of the year, in terms of transferring the property and moving things.
So I think obviously once that occurs, that's when some of that other new development can occur. And then the shipyard, which is on the RDA agenda tomorrow, we're really excited about that. We feel that between those 2 developments, we would have 2 significant anchors to our district. And then, of course, the goal is to fill it in after that. And I think that's one of the things that's oftentimes missed, is that the Broadway district is more than just Dousman to Walnut. It's actually much bigger than that. And so I think those two anchor tenants will really allow us to kind of expand that brand a little bit. As far as other developments that have occurred in the district, we had 52 building permits taken out last year, which accounted for about $2.7 million of new investment in the district. Additionally, 31 properties were transferred, which totaled about $6.7 million. And so when you look at the property transfers, that can include some of the residential units that are within the district. And we had 14 new businesses that opened in the district. A lot of that came through the DDL holdings, the first building that they've done. There were a number of great offices that moved in there. So 14 new businesses. We had 4 that closed or moved. So you think of an organization like Hinterland. What was neat about that, right? Hinterland moves out, Copper Rock and Copper State Brewing step right in. So you kind of have a net zero effect there. So what we saw is 75 new jobs coming to the district, and with the departures, a net of 40. So we're seeing more people coming into the district, which is exciting as well. So with that, I would open it up to any questions that you might have.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes.
Did you say 28 events?
28 events, yes.
Because it feels like 68. Gary is so busy so much of the time. I've been really impressed by that.
Great, we're glad to hear that, and we're actually going to be launching a few new additional events coming into next year. We're working on that plan right now, so we're just incredibly excited. I mean, I think it's, there are two different strategies. I mean, small micro events, but a large volume of them. I think kind of our niche that we found is the large community events that draw a lot of people in, but you do less of them, and we found that to be a very effective formula for us.
I'm assuming that the 28 includes the farmers market?
Correct.
And about how many of the 28 are the farmers markets? Maybe half of them?
The farmers markets account for, I believe it's 16 event dates.
16,
Yep.
yeah. So you've managed to build on top of that another 12. That's terrific.
Yep, and so you'll see, I think that number's going to even grow, like I said, moving into next year, but you look at things, Taste on Broadway, Winter Wine Walk,
Yes.
Lighting ceremony, so.
Ignite.
Ignite, yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, great. Any further?
That's what I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the operating plan for on Broadway. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That operating plan is approved. Thank you. Next, the consideration with possible action on a request of Military Avenue Business Association for approval of their 2018 BID operating plan.
Hi, my name is Leah Weicker. I'm the Executive Director of the Military Avenue Business District, and I also brought our board president, Greg Polachek, is with us. He is the bid board president. I handed out a PowerPoint presentation that we did as our annual report for our two boards. We're the new kid on the block, of course, with Broadway and downtown Green Bay leading the way for us. We did the farmers market this year. This was our second year, and every year it does grow and change, and hopefully our entire budget is bid money, and hopefully we can add back into that by adding special events that we can raise money and generate more revenue to invest back into the district. Currently, we're very successful with our planter boxes and our banners, and that really ties up a lot of money when you have such a tight budget. So there's not a lot of room to move without trying to generate more revenue through events. And I'll start in the beginning here. We're a 1960s shopping area, and when the highway moved, that really changed the dynamics of Military Avenue. So we've tried to bring it back with, we had a steering committee that met when the bid was first formed, and the city participated in the development of the street going down from a big highway down to what's there now is 4-lane. The verbiage plan is still our guideline on how to move forward with the bid goals, and from the steering committees and the city and our boards, we continue to look at that study. There were 12 12 parcels, and several of those key development areas have already been done. One big one was when Cub Food went out, and then it was purchased, and Michaels and Burlington came in with 2 outlots of Cellcom and the bank, North Shore Bank. We work closely with the police department, and there's panhandling issues right now, so we're working with them on addressing some of those kind of things. There was also indication that $50 bills were being, fake 50s were being distributed, so that was an easy call that the police call us, and we're able to send out emails directly to the business owners, and they really appreciate that. We also help the current business owners develop their businesses, or at least post things that are either for rent or for sale. There's several of that. We still have quite a few vacancies. I just met with a potential owner of the Green Bay Plaza, and they were really exciting, kind of out-of-the-box thinkers, and talked about looking for local participation as opposed to having to deal with a corporate entity. They'd love to see a banquet facility come back into the old buffet, I'm sorry, not banquet, buffets. And the reason that closed was just a corporate decision. It actually was a very successful, and our neighbors definitely frequented the place, and were very disappointed when it closed. So things like that will be exciting to have that come back. I have some pictures in there of some developments that were instigated through the bid, and just as the bid was happening, when the developments were, and the city was talking about all the different changes coming ahead. I did do statistics too on the bid. So the bid dollars have stayed the same. So in the bid plan that you received, nothing really has changed on the assessments or the boundaries. So I think we laughingly say no one's changed anything, but there are good reasons for that. Hence, not changing it, our valuation did go up by 5.9%, which is good since 2014. That did not affect our budget because we did have a cap on a low end and a cap on a high end. So the revenue coming to the military bid is still the same. Just a slight increase, actually. 7.2% increase, but only at 100,000. And upcoming, we are working with the Tuffy Oil Building, which had been a cleanup site, and we have a new developer that's going to turn it into a tea house, and has a lot of Packer clients, and it'll be like a male-oriented spa and tea house. So that's kind of exciting. We also are picking up pieces of property up on where there's still a lot of houses across from Sears. And there was one that came up on the RDA, and as I said on the RDA, we were able to catch that was a zone, a piece of property that was zoned commercial, and be able to take it back and wait for a development to come in there. I think I would love to see that move faster than slower. But it's, again, it's a slow-moving animal like my counterparts out here. I think last year I announced that we got the $50,000 from the tax, the rebate from the Packer Stadium taxes. We're still looking at designs. We just met again this morning and have, I got kind of excited about the design this time. We were looking at several different ones and none of them were wowing me. This one kind of wowed me, and so we're going to get it down to 2 and then present it to our board, and also come back to the city. We had a meeting with all the city department heads to look at it.
And this is for the Lombardi Gateway?
Yeah, so it would be right on the intersection. It's actually a county intersection, so, but the city has to regulate it too. So I have to go through both agencies, which has been a little difficult. Not difficult, actually. Both are pretty easy to get the permits, but it's just been time consuming to say who's supposed to do which piece. And so that's kind of exciting. Everyone's kind of waiting for that. And now with the Packer or the Titletown District Park open, I think people are already using it. I just looked online and it said everyone gave it a 5-star rating. So we're definitely going to be generating lots of traffic over there, and if we can drive them down Military Avenue, that would be ideal. We're also promoting the all-day breakfast, and now we're like the off-price retail place. And as they say, retail is declining, off-price is growing, and we are the place to go for off-price right now. We have our newest one, it would be Tuesday mornings in the Green Bay Plaza, hence the new possible purchase of that property. I think they really did a good job beefing it up, and now people want to buy it. So I'm excited about that. They'll sign in November if that happens. I was also told to talk about audit deficiencies. Every year we get nicked for segregation of duties. When you have one staff person, yes, that person has to do it all. So our board, though, one of the solutions is that we're looking at 3 different things now. The check registers, journal entries, and bank reconciliations, in addition to the monthly report that compares our budget to actual. To me, that's the most valuable for them to look at. Because we have such small numbers to look at, our board really knows everything we spend. And some are big ticket things, like the planter boxes and the banners. So that money, we don't draft a whole lot of checks. It's more smaller amounts of checks and larger dollar amounts. And the preparation of the annual report was the other thing that was in the audit. Again, because I'm not an accountant, I did not draft our own annual statements, financial statements. We do work with ProData 4, and they do work with the auditor, in conjunction with the auditor, to come up with our audit numbers. They are looking at the state of Wisconsin. Eric Gingrich has met with Brian, and we talked about looking at the requirement to do a full-blown audit, because it's very expensive. It takes like $3,500 of our budget, which is pretty small already. It's an incredibly small audit for $100,000. So the percents are pretty off on the state requirement to have us all full-blown audit. So we'll still have financial reviews. Hopefully that'll go through the state. Any questions? Yeah.
Looks like Sears has become more solid. Last time you were here, it was kind of sketchy.
It still is sketchy. The lease is 2 more years. They have to give notice in November to the property owner who lives in California. I had asked if I could write a grant on a piece of the property there for a permanent shelter, and he said, no, I have big plans. So
that's a good sign.
It is a good sign. And he's thinking that they're going to say they're not going to renew their lease, but he's got 2 years then to work on the project.
They're kind of shrinking here and there, and I was kind of concerned about that. I was glad to see them in here where they actually have put some improvements into the area a little bit.
Yeah, this new buyer for the Green Bay Plaza is also interested in that piece.
Okay.
I don't know if I should be publicly saying that, but he has to talk to the owner. But that would be good too, because like I said, they were really out of the box thinking, and I feel like I could really work very well with them in doing more activities there. He talked about even having a pumpkin patch. I remember when I was a kid, the Santa flew in on a helicopter, and we'd all meet in that parking lot. I mean, there were just always fun things going on, and that was the place to go. So, if we can start getting some of that stuff back, that would be really fun.
And again, I commend you on the job that you have done and the headway that you have made. I remember when you first started out, it was really so scary for everybody. We thought, wow.
Yeah.
Looks like you're growing.
Slow but sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
I like the
property
approach,
valuation.
too, because you can't beat the prices you got over there.
Yeah.
Pretty small,
Yep.
Take my grandchildren over there to get school clothes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yep, some great stores.
I noticed in your handout that you involve the neighbor associations in identifying business needs. How does that work?
I'm usually invited to all their meetings. I don't attend all of them, but I'll talk to the board quite a bit. I've also been working with Will at the city, and we're gonna, where that sign is going on the Lombardi access, or Lombardi intersection, we're gonna have to move that neighborhood sign. They never liked it there, so this is like a great opportunity for me to work with that neighborhood association and find a better location for their neighborhood sign.
I
And
think that's a good thing, yeah.
yeah, in the steering committee too, the neighborhoods were instrumental in keeping those businesses going. When MABA, the Military Avenue Business Association, was first formed, they really rallied those neighborhood associations and said, we are gonna die here if you guys don't patronize us during the construction, because that construction on Military went for years. And they really did come out and kept those small businesses going. So we kind of owe it back to them to give them what they want.
Oh, very good.
Still got Joel involved in there?
Yeah, yep. He's not on our board anymore, but yeah, he's our biggest cheerleader.
Don't let him get away.
He just had a baby too, so he's like, I have lots of things going on. Yeah.
You're mentioning the parking lot. Recalls to me one of the most impressive field trips I've ever taken in the city of Green Bay was to that parking lot with a geological engineer.
Really?
Who got us all looking down the street, Military Avenue, looking north. And you can see the waves of the old ancient Lake Wisconsin.
Really?
Uh-huh. It receded right down that street. And each one of those bumps along the way is a lower level of that lake. Be kind of nice to have an information sign up.
Yeah, and I have met with Mary Jane to talk about, we questioned the name military and where that came from.
Yeah.
And we've concluded that that couldn't be a military access road. They would have been coming from, Fort Howard.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't have went that
Really
way.
weird, yeah.
And there was only one little section, I have a map from 1880 something, and there's one little section that's called Military Avenue, kind of where H.J. Martin is right now. And none of the rest was called Military Avenue.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, it definitely was not a military route. But
My
I'll have to
ears
ask
are
about the
beginning to
water.
show some age, so I need to hear a little more about your male-oriented tea house. I've got
Yeah.
geisha girls running around in my head. What can you tell me about?
No, I think it was more spa type of things.
Oh,
So,
okay.
hair removal. I don't know how much we want to get into.
Okay, that's a little different.
Yeah, more for the Packer players, grooming. So to do manicures and pedicures. And it's more of the atmosphere that he wants to create, that it's going to be more masculine and more zen. And the plans for the outside was really, really nice. We've been looking at that vacant building for so long. I'm really excited to have him do some of the zen things on the outside, and quite a bit of green space and gardening. And we were even looking at, how does that road fit? Everyone cuts through the Shopko parking lot right now instead of using that as a street.
Yes.
And now I feel like it's our opportunity to try to correct some of those things. So I've been working with Matt and the new owner of that property to look at some of those kind of things.
Cool.
It's nice to have your president here too, I agree.
Yes. He helped come up with this PowerPoint as well.
Oh, good.
Motion approved.
Second, we have, Greg, would you like to speak?
No, well, just the slide 11, we wanted to know how we were, kind of a midstream analysis before and after. When the bid was first approved, we got underway in 2014, and so those valuations have increased about 6% in the last 3 years. And I think that's what's pretty telling. It means that the work that Leah is doing is paying off. That's what it means. So we're glad to be able to present that.
It sounds like it's getting more too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Got my motion still standing on the floor? Approved?
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the operating plan for Marble, for the bid district. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That operating plan is approved.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Director's update.
Right, So our last council meeting on October 3rd, report was approved, which included referral to park committee request about the waterfront plan, receiving place to file, discussion on hedges, approving the COP for 308 South Quincy for that single-family home, and then initial language changing the multiple message signs, and then plat right away for 3 Road. And at the council meeting, as far as third reading ordinance that was approved, was the rezoning for 2996 Finger Road. That's the Uncle Mike's property. My report.
Thank you. Sweet.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.